I'm really excited today because I am chatting with one of my very first clients, Marissa, who was so incredible to support and just excited to dive in a little bit deeper as to what your experience was with coaching and, paint possibility for what coaching could offer to other women. So thanks for being here today.
No problem. Happy to
Awesome.
be here.
Yeah. So I'd love if you could paint a picture of your life before coaching, kind of what was going on in your internal world, your external world, and then what caused you to reach out to explore what coaching could support you with.
Sure. So it's kind of hard to think about what my life was before. I'll be completely honest, but which in a way is a good sign. But I, for many years of my life, I feel like I kept going down the same dead end path, and it wasn't my career or school because that was always actually the one thing that kept working out. But I found that like relationship wise, I was just going down bad paths. I was never getting to the goals I wanted, which was obviously to get married, start a family. And I found myself that even externally outside of relationships and other than work and school, bad things were always happening. Everything was like something would come up, something would happen, I would see something, and immediately my mind would go to something negative. And I would say, oh my God, this is not going to work out for me. He's going to do this person's going to do that. Like this thing's not going to work out. And it seemed like it was just bad thing after bad thing after bad thing. And it just led to me being very negative. And I was noticing that the same things would happen. Like, for example, a relationship, every single one I got into, the person was just not there, or they would cheat on me or something. And I saw the same patterns. And I would sit there saying, like, well, what is going on? Why is this happening to me? And it actually made me really bitter. And I noticed myself falling away from who I was as a person and who I used to be. Like I no longer, I wasn't happy. I'd wake up with anxiety, and it just got really bad. And there was something that happened. I think it was 20, I don't even remember if it was 2020 or 2021. I don't remember the year anymore. And, I was starting to get to a point where I was just fed up with the way people are treating me. And something happened where I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I can't be hanging on to things that are not good for me. I need to stop with the negative thoughts and like automatically assuming that something bad's going to happen instead of trying to be positive. And so I sort of turned to self-help books. I
Just,
found the book, yes, The Secret.
yeah.
Yeah. So I found it very inspiring because I noticed that it started to change the way I thought about things, and it kind of kept me motivated. So I started reading like 10 minutes a day, and it sort of kept me in a spot that was like, okay, yeah, like if other people can do this, I can do it. And so I started trying to do a lot of things like that, like daily practices and things to kind of start changing my mentality, but it just wasn't enough.
Mhm.
And I had seen your post or something that it's almost like it was a sign and just came to me like, hey, you need to look at this, you need to sign up for it. And, that's sort of what started me. And I was like, everything came together at once where I was like, okay, I'm tired of this same old stuff. Like, I need to break the negative attitude. I need to come back to who I was as a person. Like, I don't want all of these outside forces defining my life and who I am. Like, I need to take control and really start changing it because life should not be like this. And so that's sort of how I got to this one-on-one coaching and
Yeah.
sort of what it was like.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that you shared in the background of it because I think it's so common for women as well, like to feel like, and this is how I felt too, like, okay, my career, I'm so great at my career, and like every aspect of my life besides relationships seemed to work out. And I think that's common for so many women. And I think I see a lot of women just kind of like put their head down and really focus on their career or focus on every aspect of their life. And then as soon as you bring up relationships, it's like, oh God, like, rolling your eyes and feeling like, oh, well, that area of my life just doesn't seem to work out. And I think that it's common for women to, like, on the inside, just feel crappy about themselves for that, like being like, geez, why can't I get it right in every other area of my life? But I think it's so common. And so, like, for any women that are watching, like, if you do feel that way, I'm just glad that we're talking about this, because the more that we bring these things to light, the less alone that people feel. Um, and in terms of, reaching out for support, I think that investing in ourselves is something. I know it was the first time you invested in your personal growth. And I think it's common before that to kind of be dabbling in self-help books, or like, okay, just kind of feeling like, how can I improve myself? What do you think the difference was, from trying to do it on your own versus having guided support?
I think it really came down to figuring out the root cause
Mhm.
of certain, I don't want to call them issues, but certain things that I was doing, like whether it was I started noticing myself projecting the way people treated me onto others. And that was just damaging any potential opportunities I had in the future for anything. And so I think realizing that I could do all I want to try and change something going forward. But the problem was, is I wasn't digging into the why, like, why was I acting that way? What caused it? And I guess the biggest thing was digging into that. And even though it was uncomfortable, it was sort of recognizing where something came from and really making the connection of, okay, well, why am I acting this way? Well, this is what used to happen, and seeing the pattern of how, even from my childhood, it sort of led me to where I was today. And so I think that was the biggest difference, is it wasn't just going forward. It was really digging in to resolve the root cause of it and identify the root cause.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really hard to, dive into to get to that root cause on our own. I know that was my experience too when I started working on myself. It's like, okay, I want to get better, but to really have someone guide you to understand, why things are the way they are is super valuable. Um, what was it like for you to invest in yourself? I know that, not every woman is investing in themselves. Why would you recommend someone, invest in their personal growth in this way?
It was one of those things where I was like, okay, do I really want to spend all that money? But then I sort of said to myself, well, I do, because do I want to keep in the same pattern that I've been in, or do I want to actually do something to address it?
Yeah.
And so I guess to me, it's something that you literally cannot put a price on, because you, the person that means the most is yourself, and you need to do whatever you have to do to take care of it. And I've told people, it may be a lot of money, but it's worth it in the end, because you're going to see changes in yourself and in your life that you would have never been able to get anyway. And people invest in things all the time, whether it's a new car or a house or whatever the case may be. But what is that really doing? If you buy that new house or that new car, but you're still the same person, are you really happy? Probably not. And so it's almost like the same thing as people, I guess, should really think about, like, what does their person mean to them,
Mhm.
and how do they feel about their life?
Yep. Yeah. And I love that you brought that up too. And I think that when I was first really getting serious about my personal growth as well, it can feel like, well, how could I just invest this money in myself? Like, it feels like so unnatural. And I think that is because we are so used to buying external things, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to, make a payment on coaching, but okay, there's like, but let me go get this cosmetic procedure, or let me go buy this car, or let me go shopping, right? And that feels normal because I think we're so accustomed to, trying to get that validation externally. Like, if my life looks like this on the outside, then I'll be happy. And I think that ends up becoming just like an endless path, because like the outside stuff truly never matters. And it's like when we start, investing on our healing, our growth, the internal work, that's really when our external world shifts. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about coaching is like, if you want the things on the outside to change, like first let's go inwards. as well. So in terms of actually working together, because a lot of people don't know what coaching support looks like. So in my program, it's 4 months. We have weekly sessions, 3 a month. And then in between the sessions, we use an app called Boxer, where you'll have daily support for texting, voice noting, just so that, life is happening in between the sessions. So for someone who's never done this before, can you share a little bit about kind of the sessions and Boxer and how both of those types of support helped you?
Yeah, I think like when I really think about it, and I was explaining this to someone, the sessions themselves that happen like on the 3 times a month, I think it was, those are more I found geared towards getting into the root cause of certain things. It's sort of starting with, okay, what is your concern? What has happened during the week? Like what's good that happened? And sort of it's really high level. And I saw it as more the opportunity to say, like I'm tired of these same patterns. I'm tired of these negative things happening to me. And you really get into the past. I'll put it that way. And so those sessions were good for identifying like very broad, general issues and talking about, where I wanted to be in the future. And I think that like Voxer was more like the day to day. So those things that come up that you may forget about in a week. So there might have been like an issue that happened that day, whether it was an argument or a difficult situation at work. And it's one of those things where you're like, oh my gosh, I need advice. I don't know how I should handle this. I don't know the right way to do it. And Voxer was there to sort of talk through the issue in that moment, as opposed to an issue that's been in existence for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so, I found like the Voxer support to be super helpful in kind of addressing the day-to-day issues I was encountering, or whether it was like battling my thoughts of what's going on or negative thoughts, whatever the case may be, but that supplemented everything that was going on in the sessions. And so really talking through it on Voxer would get me to a place where with anything, I felt comfortable in my approach. And even though it felt unnatural at first, I sort of approached it in a way that I wouldn't have usually, which actually made all the difference. And then over time, it sort of helped. And so I think sort of that's how I saw both aspects of the coaching, and sort of how I thought one was, or how one was more helpful for certain things versus the other. But granted, they were both extremely helpful because they really tie together.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. I think that's why it's so important to me to offer Voxer, because when I thought about like, okay, I want to create this program and I want to help women get results fast, right? And so we go so deep on the sessions. It's a deep dive, really getting to the root cause, really talking about, okay, you're here now and you want to be here. Like, what do we have to do to get you there? But I think I personally, since I just love connecting deeply and really staying connected for the duration of the support, it's like having Voxer in between, because your life is going to happen. Like, if you go on a date with someone, or if you're a partner and you get in an argument, or this happens at work and you're feeling this way, you can feel, rest assured, like, okay, Jennie's essentially in my pocket and I can, reach out and share this with her. And that's something that I really love. And I think that's a big reason why I see clients get results so fast, is because we're talking about these concepts on a call, but then rest assured, as your life is happening, you get to integrate that learning. And so I'm glad that you found that valuable. And certainly your results came super quick. Like I remember we made your vision statement and then we came back to it. I think it was only like a month into working together. And as we were reading it, we're like, okay, this came true. This came true. I remember that call so distinctly, which was awesome. So let's shift a little bit into your actual results. So I want to talk about your relationship to yourself. So you spoke a little bit about, your life prior to coaching. As a result of coaching, how has your relationship with yourself improved, and what does that look like?
I would say there's so much improvement, and to sort of think about what the biggest thing about myself and my life before as compared to now is I'm finding that I rarely have negative thoughts. I mean, no one's perfect, but I'm not battling in my head. So I'm not sitting there saying, "Oh, this person's doing this, like they must not like me," or I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh no, I just got this text, like it must be something bad." Like before, just as an example, I would have a friend that would text me, and every time she texted me, I always like it was always something bad. And so I got in the habit where I'd see her name pop up and I would say, "Oh my God, this is another bad thing." And now when her name pops up, I sort of sit there and I'm like, "Oh, cool. Like she's texting me right now. Like, wonder what she's doing." Like those bad thoughts just aren't there. And as a result, I'm finding that it's very rare that something bad does happen to me. And when it does, like it's going from it just keeps happening to it almost never happens. But when it does, because of all the work I've done, I approach it in a much different way. Like I don't sit there and sulk about it. I sort of say, okay, you know what? Things happen. It's fixable. All I need to do is this and it's fine. And I try not to dwell on it anymore. And I notice that I don't. I'm much kinder to myself because before I was very critical. And even if I didn't need to be, like I was obsessed about certain things, like, do my clothes look right? Does my hair look right? Oh my gosh, I have this scar on my face and everyone can see it and I just look ridiculous. And I stopped doing that. And I stopped being nicer and instead, even from like, and this took a while, this was the hardest part,
Yeah.
was to not criticize myself and not be my own worst enemy. And so now I kind of say like, "Oh, I really ate like crap this weekend, but that's okay. Like Monday's coming and I can get back on track." Or no, my body needs a cheat meal. Like I would really, anytime I ate something that wasn't meal prep, I would sort of punish myself. And it just wasn't fair because in the end, it made me feel worse. And so everything has become more positive and it's almost like if I were to take, like duplicate myself. And if I were looking at myself, I'm not sitting there saying, "Oh, this is wrong with you and this is wrong with you." Instead, I'm just congratulating myself for anything I do, whether it's, "Oh, nice, you went to the gym 6 days this week. That's great. Like now you deserve to go do something fun, or you deserve to go out with friends, or you deserve to go to dinner." And so I would just say that like it just made me kinder to myself. And it's hard to sort of put that into words in
Yeah.
terms of like what that means and how it's improved. But I think it's just so many different factors that come into this all that make who I am and my relationship with myself better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like especially women and like our, body image and all of those things, it can be really challenging to be kind to ourselves. And that has so much to do with like our society and media. And I just think, from the time we're little girls, we learn that how we look is so important. And I think a lot of women tie their worthiness to, their physical appearance. And so it can be tough when these things are so deeply ingrained. And I think that it's natural for most people, like if we, go off track or, something we don't like about ourselves, the natural instinct is to be mean to ourselves or criticize or be hard on ourselves or judge ourselves. And I think that that's one of the biggest aspects of some of the mindset work that I'll help clients with. And that, of course, I helped you with is like, how can we actually shift that judgment to the compassion that we need? And it is a hard shift because it's so unnatural. We're not used to saying like, "Hey, you know what? It's okay. It's okay." Like, you can, like you said, you can get back, on track next week and you're just fine the way you are. We're not used to speaking to ourselves in such a nice way. But the positives of that is once we learn how to actually give ourselves compassion and accept where we are now, that actually does create that path to move forward and to feel better about ourselves because and I like to share to clients like, okay, there's one road of kindness and there's one road of judgment. And if you're judging yourself and criticizing yourself, how can you really expect that that will support you to move forward? Like, has that been working for you? So I think that's an amazing shift because that supports you to move forward, in any area of life if you're being kind to yourself first. So I want to shift a little bit into some other positive outcomes in your relationship. So I know when we started working together, you were not in a relationship. So I just wanted to speak to how, coaching has supported your relationships positively as well.
Say, for one, my friendships have improved because I'm more aware of what's going on. So I have certain friends that are extremely negative, and I have others that they're very much like me. And I've sort of improved both of them by not letting the negative friends bring me down. I hate to say it that way, but I listen to them and I don't criticize their feelings. And instead, I respond to them with something positive. So instead of agreeing, I'll just try and spin the wheel and sort of say, well, hey, look, that may be the case, but it's also good for this. Or I try to instill on them more positivity if they're going down a path of path I used to go on. I don't respond by getting, in the past I would have an attitude, to be completely honest. Like I would just say, okay, can you like stop thinking that way? And so instead of doing that, I've become more sensitive and receptive to how other people are feeling. And I've responded in most cases in any interaction, this is even with the general public, in a very like kind way. And I'll be the first to admit that I was not always the nicest person in the past, and that like significantly affected my relationships, and not in a good way. And so I've just found that I'm happier and I'm not as like testy with people, and I don't snap at them as easily. And that obviously never goes down a good path when you snap at someone. That just, creates friction and whatever else negative in a relationship. And so in terms of like friends and other people, that's definitely helped. I'm not perfect all the time. Obviously, no one is. But I certainly don't do it as much as I had in the past. And for, I guess, like romantic relationships, is I wasn't in a relationship at the time of our coaching, and it actually was a turning point. But like the timing worked out very interestingly. And I reached a point where, I had been single for like 7, 8 years, and it just wasn't working out. And part of it is I looked at it and I said, well, look at the way I'm acting. Like, look how I'm responding to my significant other or the person that I really like. I mean, look how I'm treating them. I'm not treating them like a human being, let's put it that way. And part of it was that I saw trends in, okay, well, I'm treating someone, as I said earlier, the way that I was treated. And that doesn't make it right. And so I've gotten so much better at not doing that. And it's very general for me to say that, but it did lead to a relationship. And I truly believe that all of the coaching and the changing the way I'm thinking is what made all of this sort of come together. But now it's like I'm constantly improving, but I'm using the tools I learned during coaching to help get through certain situations. Like there are times where I treat my significant other in a way that he shouldn't be treated. And it's hard for me to recognize in the moment, and he either brings it up or I realize later that I shouldn't have said something that way. And so I would say that the coaching has really, like, it's brought me something really good in terms of a romantic relationship. And I've just seen such a change in how I used to act versus how I act now. And I feel like I'm more receptive to their concerns, even when it's criticism. Again, I don't always accept it and kind of just move on and say, yes, you're right. Like, of course I argue, but for the most part, I try not to. And I try to be more open in communication. And more importantly, I try to be nicer, like listen to what he likes and what he wants. And it's not like a job or a burden on me. I want to do it. and I want to be that nicer person. And so I've noticed that because the coaching has just changed who I am as a person, it's only helped my relationships and helped it so I'm not going down the same path as I always went down. And that I'm not treating people in a bad way. And I never was like a mean person where I treated everyone poorly, but you kind of think about, all right, well, how was I? And you notice like those times when you were very snippy or you had an attitude or you said something you really didn't need to say. And you could have just been nice about it or just let it go. But I have a personality where I have trouble letting things go. And so, part of the coaching was learning how to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And I still continue to work on those things and improve it. But it's really like just everything combined into one has sort of got me to where I am. And I feel like got in my relationships in a very good spot.
Yeah. And I appreciate you just bringing up the realness of romantic relationships and friendships as well, because, the goal isn't, okay, how do I never have an argument or how do I always be perfect and get it right? Because the truth is that romantic relationships or relationships of any kind, things are going to come up. There are going to be arguments. There are going to be disagreements. We're all, different and are all coming from our own perspectives, our own pasts, like that are shaping how we're showing up now. And I think what I really have noticed about you is each opportunity, like, I, as a coach, I'm looking at an argument or a disagreement or something that comes up in conflict as an opportunity, like, how can I grow through this conversation? How can I remain really open? How can I work through conflict in a healthy way to ultimately bring me closer to that partner? And so I just love how you shared, like, when stuff comes up, you're able to better handle it. You're better able to communicate in an open way. And like your self-awareness of like, maybe later on, you're like, okay, wait a second, like, did I handle that correctly? Or should I have not said that? And then, hearing that you're taking ownership for, where you're showing up in a way that you maybe didn't intend to. So I think that all of that is amazing. And in terms of the relationship, that you ended up, I think it was towards the end of coaching where you ended up getting in the partnership that you're in now. How is that different from your past? Because I know you shared that you were single for a long time, and that you had, these patterns of disappointment in relationships. How has coaching supported you to kind of close those chapters of the past?
The easiest way would be to describe, because all of my past relationships, or I don't even know if I'd call them relationships, had they were the same type of person. Mm-hmm. And I think it's easiest to compare them to now because it really is like, it just defines who I was versus who I am. And so in the past, I always gravitated towards people that were mean. Like they just didn't treat people nicely. It was the person the jock or the guy who went out all the time and had friends and did fun things, or didn't exactly like treat me the way I should be treated. Like we didn't go on dates or things like that. And I actually shied away from going on dates, and I found them awkward and I found them scary. And so I'd always go for the guy that was sort of just can get away with things, that I would just accept it as being my fault, and sort of what I was going for back then, everything but a nice guy. And when a nice guy would come along, someone who would treat me right, I just wasn't interested. Mm-hmm. It would start off fine, but then I would start becoming distant and not trying to get rid of them, but I would almost self-destruct. And it was irritating. Like as much as I wanted in my head to say, yes, I want all of these things. Like I want someone who goes on dates with me. I want someone who treats me well. I want someone who tells me they love me, blah, blah, blah. Despite wanting those, I seem to not go for the people that can give me that. And it's, I could give certain things to myself, but in terms of a relationship, I would go for the opposite. And so I found that somehow at some point, I don't know how, I don't know if it was a wake up call or during coaching, that all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, I don't want that. Like I've always said I didn't want it, but now I really feel that I don't want it. And I actually decide. I said, you know what? I realized the mistake I made with someone who had come back into my life, and he was a nice guy. And he was, in my head, everything that I wanted in the past, but everything I would just move away from because I would self destruct. And I changed so much to the point where I was unwilling to accept anything of my past. I just wanted nothing to do with it. And I said to myself, you know what? No, I'm going to give this a chance because I'm a new person and I've changed and worked through many of the issues I have or had, I mean, and I was able to actually, I mean, it was a bit more of a history, but I essentially went towards the nice guy, the one who would treat me right. And I can honestly say, like, I would have never gotten to that point where I would have given him a chance, or I really want to say him give me a chance, in all honesty, but I would have never gotten there if it weren't for coaching, because I guarantee I would have at some point started to self-destruct again. And I knew that wasn't what I wanted. But now I sit back and I think, like, wow, this is like the person I wanted for my entire life, but I just kept pushing away. And now I'm at a point where I don't push away anymore. Like, I don't do to them what people did to me. And I really feel that, like, I've shut the door on everything in the past, like who I was, who I'd hang out with, who I'd talk to. Like, I no longer have that interest. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even want to associate with people like that, or guys who treat women the wrong way.
Yeah, I love so much of what you shared, and what I really hear from it is that you actually allowed yourself to have a new beginning through coaching, and that is so powerful because we all have that choice. Like, it's so easy to feel chained to the past, and I think that's where, coaching support, I really try to be a stand for what all of my clients really desire in their life. So I try to represent that, right? And I'm always trying to guide them towards that. And so making that decision for yourself of, wait a second, I actually can have different, I can have a new outcome, and I can choose that at any time. You really got into this empowered mindset and this empowered place of, like, I deserve better and I'm going to create that in my life. And I think, that's something that I wish for all women to really have, that moment of, like, wait, I can have different. Yes, I've been through all of this and it's been difficult. And that doesn't mean that that has to be the ongoing pattern for the rest of my life. So I think that that's really powerful. And I think that that really contributed to, the relationship that you're in now, and being able to accept the love that you deserve, and let, keep your heart open and let that love in. Whereas in the past, it sounds like there would be some self-sabotage or self-destructing of something healthy because perhaps you weren't used to that. And I think that's also another really common thing that I see with women is, like, if someone was to ask you, like, okay, do you want a healthy relationship? It's like, yeah, of course, I want a healthy relationship. I want someone that's there for me, that all of these things. But when they show up in our world, if that feels unfamiliar, there can be that tendency to push it away, or to question it, or to not really accept it because we're not used to that. And so in my personal experience and in many of the clients I've supported, it's actually sometimes that first healthy relationship that can be the most challenging after a whole past of unhealthy relationships, because it feels so foreign, right? But it's just about kind of understanding that just because it's foreign doesn't mean that you shouldn't allow yourself to accept it and that you don't deserve it. And so it's just been awesome to see how all of that unfolded for you. So anything
Yeah.
else that you want to share that you feel we haven't covered that coaching supported you with? I know we covered a lot here, and I appreciate you being so open.
Um, I don't think really necessarily about me, but I guess, like, my message to people and other women would be, if you find yourself in the same bad patterns, and I know there's a lot of people that in were or are in the place I was, which is that you're in a rut and you feel like it's just bad, 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 and it's constant, like, you default to negative. I really would say that those people should consider coaching, because it was literally life changing. And I mean, I think I would have been in the same path, if not worse, had I not chosen to invest in myself and to do this. Like you really don't see it at first, like the weeks go by and then maybe you're done with the first month and you're kind of like, well, okay, where am I? It's really not until month 2 or 3 that you're like, wait a minute, things have actually started to change. And by the time you get to that 4th month, you're almost in awe. Like I just woke up one day and I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is like, for anyone out there is people need to give it a chance, because everyone's a critic and they'll say, you know what, it's been a month and nothing in my life is changing. Well, that might be true, but it's really behind the scenes that little things are happening here and there that they start adding up over the months. And then you just get to a point where you're like, just like you had said, we had written my vision statement. And when we went through it, I was like, wow, I would have never thought that any of this would have happened. And that was one of the points where I was like, my life is literally changed. And I still see it now. And so I guess I would just say that if anyone's considering it and if they're sort of teetering between, do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? But they really need to make a change in their life, I would just say they should do it. Just take a chance on yourself and do it, because you won't regret it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, it really is the little actions that we take day by day that really add up to those big changes of the internal work. I'm working on myself, and all of a sudden your external world shifts, which is really awesome. And so I'm super grateful that I got to support you, and I'm still blown away by your progress and just seeing everything that's, unfolding in your life. So just really honored that I got to support you through everything and that I still get to witness your growth now. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.